On a frigid January morning in 1992, the world was silent and still in southern Indiana. Two hunters, bundled against the biting cold, trudged through a snow-blanketed field, their breath visible in the icy air. What began as a routine outing would soon become a moment that would haunt them forever. In a remote, snow-dusted field near the town of Madison, the hunters stumbled upon a horrifying sight, a body partially wrapped in a scorched red blanket, lying motionless in the snow. The remains were burned so badly that any hope of immediate recognition was lost, the features obscured by fire and frost. Nearby, a gasoline-soaked soda bottle lay discarded in the frosty grass, a chilling clue that hinted at the deliberate and violent nature of the crime. The field, once peaceful, was now a silent witness to unimaginable horror. When police arrived, the brutality of the scene stunned even the most seasoned investigators. The victim was a child, and the violence inflicted was almost beyond comprehension. Officers struggled to process what they were seeing, their faces etched with shock and disbelief. News of the grisly discovery spread rapidly, sending shockwaves through Jefferson County. The tight-knit community where everyone knew each other was suddenly gripped by fear and disbelief. The sense of safety that had defined small-town life was shattered in an instant. Parents clung to their children, holding them a little tighter as anxiety and suspicion crept into daily life. Conversations in grocery stores and church pews turned to whispers of worry, and the comfort of familiarity was replaced by a chilling uncertainty. Identification of the victim proved difficult, as the fire had erased so many details. But soon a missing person report from a nearby town collided with the grim reality of the crime scene, and the pieces began to fall into place. The victim was identified as Shanda Sharer, a 12-year-old girl who had only recently moved to the area. Her innocent smile, captured in a yearbook photo, stood in stark contrast to the tragedy that had befallen her. As investigators dug deeper, the story that emerged was not one of a faceless monster lurking in the shadows, but of teenage jealousy, betrayal, and rage spiraling violently out of control. The truth was more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The perpetrators were not strangers to the community. They were girls, barely older than Shanda herself. Their faces, once familiar in school hallways and neighborhood streets, now appeared in mugshots and courtroom sketches, forever changed by the darkness of their actions. That frozen field became the starting point of a case that would horrify not just Indiana, but the entire nation. The brutality and senselessness of the crime forced everyone to confront the unsettling reality of what young people are capable of. It was a crime that exposed the terrifying depths of adolescent cruelty and left a permanent scar on the community's collective memory. Headlines screamed of the tragedy, and the nation watched in disbelief. The community gathered in grief, holding candlelight vigils and comforting one another as they tried to make sense of the unthinkable. The innocence of small-town life was lost, replaced by sorrow and unanswered questions. And for Shanda's family, the nightmare was only beginning. Their world had been shattered, and the pain of their loss would echo for years to come. Before tragedy struck, Shanda Sharer was a bright, friendly 12-year-old, adjusting to a new life in New Albany, Indiana. She was discovering her place at Hazelwood Junior High, making friends, and experiencing her first crushes. Shanda's budding romance with Amanda Heverin, another student, was innocent, until Amanda's ex, Melinda Lovelace, took notice. Melinda, 17, saw Shanda as a rival and became consumed by jealousy. Her obsession grew, fueled by her own troubled past. Melinda's anger turned into a dangerous fixation, painting Shanda as the villain in her story. Shanda, unaware of the storm brewing, was just a girl navigating school and friendships. She had no idea she'd become the target of someone else's rage. The darkness gathering around her was invisible, until it was too late. Her only crime was falling in love. The plot against Shanda was orchestrated by 4 teenage girls, each drawn in for different reasons. Melinda Lovelace, the ringleader, was driven by jealousy and pain. Lori Tackett, rebellious and fascinated by the occult, became Melinda's enforcer. Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence, both 15, were impressionable followers swept up in the group's momentum. Tony, who knew Shanda, was tasked with luring her out. Hope simply went along, unable or unwilling to resist. Together they formed a deadly alliance, each playing a role in the unfolding tragedy. On January 10, 1992, their insecurities and anger fused into a single, monstrous purpose. Shanda had no idea she was walking into a trap set by her peers. The night began with a lie. Tony and Hope told Shanda that Amanda wanted to see her. It was a simple deception, whispered in the shadows of a quiet suburban home, but it would set in motion a chain of events that no one could have imagined. The girls' voices were hushed, their faces tense with anticipation, as they convinced Shanda to sneak out into the darkness. Excited and hopeful, Shanda left her home, stepping into the cool night air, completely unaware that she was being delivered to her tormentors. The world outside was silent, the streets empty, as she made her way toward what she believed would be a secret meeting. Instead of meeting Amanda, she was taken to the witch's castle, a crumbling ruin on the edge of town, where Melinda and Lori waited in the shadows. The air was thick with menace, and the old stone walls seemed to close in around her. The pretense vanished. Melinda confronted Shanda, knife in hand, and the terror began. The girl's laughter turned cold, and Shanda's confusion quickly gave way to fear as she realized the danger she was in. What followed was a 6-hour ordeal of taunting, beating, and escalating cruelty. The girls took turns tormenting Shanda, their actions growing more violent and unpredictable as the hours dragged on. Shanda was bound, gagged, and forced into the trunk of a car. The darkness inside was suffocating, and every bump in the road filled her with dread. The girls drove aimlessly through the night, arguing and whispering, deciding what to do next as Shanda suffered in the darkness. The car became a moving prison, its passengers gripped by a mix of fear, excitement, and cruelty. The violence intensified with every hour, each stop brought new horrors, and Shanda's hope for rescue faded with every passing minute. Shanda's desperate pleas were met with chilling indifference. The girls seemed unmoved by her suffering, their faces cold and unfeeling. The night was far from over, the worst was yet to come. The darkness outside mirrored the darkness in the girls' hearts, and the sense of impending doom grew heavier with every mile. Their journey would end in a frozen field, with a plan to erase both Shanda and their crime. The horror was relentless, and the cold morning air would bear silent witness to the unspeakable acts that had unfolded. And Shanda's nightmare was only just beginning, as the true extent of the cruelty she faced was yet to be revealed. At the witch's castle, a place already shrouded in local legend and fear, threats quickly turned to violence. The air was thick with tension, the darkness pressing in as the girls confronted each other, their anger echoing off the cold stone walls. Melinda, consumed by jealousy and rage, accused Shanda of stealing Amanda. Her fury was uncontrollable, and it fueled the first blows, raw, impulsive, and shockingly brutal for girls so young. The assault escalated with terrifying speed. Shanda was beaten mercilessly, her cries echoing in the night. The violence intensified. She was strangled until she lost consciousness, her body left limp and vulnerable on the cold ground. But Shanda clung to life. Instead of mercy, she was dragged to Lori's car and forced into the trunk, her fate now sealed by the cruelty of her attackers. The girls drove through the night, stopping at a friend's house and a gas station. They laughed, joked, and acted as if nothing was amiss. Their chilling detachment was almost as disturbing as the violence itself, a mask of normalcy hiding their monstrous actions. Eventually they reached a remote, desolate field, far from help, far from hope. The isolation of the place mirrored the darkness in their hearts. Shanda, battered but miraculously still alive, was pulled from the trunk. She struggled to stand, her body broken but her will to survive still flickering. There, the horror deepened. She was stabbed repeatedly, her pleas for mercy ignored. Gasoline was poured over her, the cold liquid sealing her fate. Even as she fought desperately for her life, her attackers showed no mercy. Their faces were cold, their hearts unmoved by her suffering. Melinda struck the match, and in an instant, Shanda was engulfed in flames. The night sky lit up with fire, a final act of unimaginable cruelty. As dawn broke, the girls went to McDonald's for breakfast. They laughed, joked, and even bragged about what they had done, as if it were nothing more than a prank. Their lack of remorse was as horrifying as the act itself. The emptiness in their eyes revealed a chilling absence of empathy or regret. They had tried to erase Shanda from existence, but the horror of that night would haunt them, and the entire community, forever. The pain and shock would ripple through families, friends, and a town left searching for answers. The brutality was beyond comprehension, a descent into darkness that would never be forgotten. The girls thought they'd committed the perfect crime, but guilt quickly cracked their pact of silence. Tony Lawrence, overwhelmed by remorse, confessed to a friend who urged her to go to the police. Within hours, Tony was in an interrogation room, revealing every detail. Her confession broke the case wide open. Police swiftly arrested Melinda, Lori, and Hope. Their denials crumbled under the weight of evidence. Within a day, all four were in custody. The community was stunned. The killers were local girls, not strangers. The truth was more horrifying than anyone imagined. The web of lies had unraveled, exposing the darkness beneath the surface of small-town life. The legal response was swift and severe. All four girls were charged as adults, facing the full weight of the law. To spare Shanda's family a painful trial, prosecutors offered plea deals. Melinda Loveless and Lori Tackett received 60-year sentences. Hope Rippey's sentence was reduced to 35 years on appeal. Tony Lawrence, whose confession solved the case, received 20 years and was the first released. Over the years, the others were paroled, each release reopening wounds for the community. For many, no sentence could ever equal the loss of Shanda's life. The legal chapter closed, but the pain endured. Justice, for some, would always feel incomplete. For years, Shanda's mother, Jacques Vaught, was consumed by grief and anger. Forgiveness seemed impossible until she learned of Melinda's transformation in prison. Melinda became a respected trainer in a program pairing inmates with service dogs. Jacques, moved by Melinda's work, made a remarkable decision. She donated a puppy named Angel to the program, requesting Melinda train her in Shanda's honor. It was an act of grace that stunned everyone, including Melinda. For Jacques, it was a way to reclaim her daughter's legacy and bring good from tragedy. "If you don't let good things come from bad things, nothing gets better," she said. The unlikely alliance brought healing to both women. Melinda confronted her actions. Jacques found a measure of peace. Angel's story became a symbol of forgiveness and hope. Even in darkness, light can emerge. Shanda Sharer's murder left a scar on the nation, forcing us to confront the reality of evil among the young. The case shattered assumptions about innocence and the capacity for cruelty. It became a touchstone for discussions on juvenile crime and the dangers of unchecked peer pressure. The story has been retold in books, documentaries, and true crime podcasts, ensuring Shanda is never forgotten. For southern Indiana, the wounds remain. The witch's castle is now a symbol of lost innocence. The case changed the community forever, but Jacques Vaught's act of compassion transformed tragedy into a lesson on forgiveness. Shanda's legacy is not just her loss, but the hope and healing her memory inspired. We remember her not only for the horror but for the strength and grace that followed. If this story moved you, join us for more explorations into the cases that shape our world.